Hey everyone, it's Tim Hepworth here with Fly Fishing Board Outfitters and Thursday Night Fly Tying. We're going to take you through another quick tie, this time for episode 1 of season 4. We're going to be doing the silent bob. So go ahead, open up your box, get in there, grab your episode 1. That's what we're tying out of today. Okay, silent bob. So we got about a size 4 streamer hook. We're gonna use some UTC 140 to get us started for the majority of this fly before we switch over to a little bit heavier thread for working with the deer hair. Gonna go ahead and start our thread just behind the eye. We'll get our tag out of there. We're gonna run that thread all the way back to the hook bend. We'll stop it right there. To get this going, we're gonna throw in a quick dubbing loop in which we're gonna put a little bit of pearl minnow back or flash fiber. So all I'm gonna do is create that little loop with my fingers. I'm gonna take some thread wraps to secure it where I want it. Then I'm gonna bring my thread forward to about the halfway mark up the hook itself. I'm gonna throw a quick half hitch in there, get my thread out of the way. I'm gonna grab my dubbing loop tool, and I'll just hook that in there and set it out of the way. Now we're gonna get in there, we're gonna be working with this flash fiber, okay? This is gonna be the majority of our underbody of this fly. So I'm gonna go in there, I'm gonna pull some of it apart, I'm gonna stack it up, pull and stack, till I'm left with something like this. I'm gonna go ahead, open that up with my finger, so that's my loop. I'm gonna come in, set that material in there just like so, spread it out a bit, and have something that looks similar to this. I'm gonna add just a little bit more, I think we're gonna need it. Take one more small pinch, open up that dubbing loop again, set that in there, and now what we're gonna do, take our dubbing tool out here, give it a good spin. I'm holding my finger just below the material itself. As I let that come down, that's all gonna start to spin into place. And we want that to cord up quite nice, so I'm gonna keep spinning until I have a nice rope. I will tease it out a little bit. The dubbing brush here momentarily. Coming here with my brush, all I'm gonna do is pick it out a little bit because I do want some of this flash to extend back a little bit before we palmer this forward up the hook shank. So all I'm doing is going there and picking it out a little bit. I don't want to pick so hard that I'm actually pulling fiber out. I just want to stir it up. So I got something that looks like so. Now I'm gonna go in there with my fingers, wet them a little bit. I'm gonna stroke the fibers so they're headed rearward, and I'm gonna start palmering this forward. And just continually encourage it to go rearward. I like to not use the rotary function when I'm working with this specifically, just to try to have a little better manage on what's going on. And we're gonna work this forward to about the halfway point in the hook. We got quite a bit of other materials to go in here. I'm gonna leave it there. I'm gonna bring my thread back. Take a couple thread wraps behind, a couple in front. Make sure that's good and secure. Go ahead in and I'm gonna trim out that little dubbing loop we created. Make sure it's pulled back. I'm gonna take a few thread wraps back just to really secure it in before I start brushing. You wouldn't want to be pulling all that out. Kind of be counterproductive. And then we're gonna go ahead and we're just gonna really stir this up and brush it rearward. Brush, brush, brush. Reset my hook a little bit here. So we got that nice shape headed rearward. It's gonna look like a underside of a belly here, as well as just getting that nice flash material, okay? So this is my version of the silent bob. We've changed it a little bit from the original. But what we're gonna do next, we're gonna come in here, we're gonna put our rabbit zonker on. So how I'm gonna measure this, because I don't want this tail to be so long that it's way out here and we get short strikes on this. I'm gonna take the leather portion only. I'm gonna measure off the hook and I'm gonna go 1.5 times. So that's 1.5. I'm gonna turn that right on top of the hook. I don't have to worry too much about trying to separate some of the fiber out, because if I pull my thread right down on top, it makes a bit of a nice little plump area in that fur. I'm just gonna take some thread wraps down, secure it in place. Always important that once I got a few here, I lift it up, put a few underneath to really secure that, make sure it's not going anywhere. Come in here, trim that out. Lay a few more wraps down, secure it all. Look at the underside, there's my belly. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a few thread wraps back, because now I wanna bring this back to about that halfway point. There's my tail, I like how it's all going rearward. Okay, next material is we're gonna make another quick little dubbing loop. This one's gonna be a little shorter than our last one. So again, all I'm doing is making that loop, throwing the thread over a couple times, securing it in place. I'm gonna throw a quick half hitch in here just to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. Gonna leave it there. Now I'm gonna come up to I'm gonna call this my gill material. We wanted something red. This is gonna look like, almost appear like a fish's gills or a bayfish's gills. Take my dubbing spinner tool and leave it in there. Now this stuff here, we don't need a whole ton of it, but we're gonna pull some of it apart, kind of try to stack it as well. This stuff doesn't want to stack quite as nice. I'll go in there and I'll trim it, stack it on top, pull it a little bit again. We're just trying to loosen up those fibers so when we put them in there that they're not gonna get too bound down. So I got something that looks like so. I'm gonna go ahead and set it in my dubbing loop, making sure this time that I get it right up to the head of the dubbing loop, because we're gonna start this gill right off the hop here. Okay, I'm only gonna need about one full wrap around the hook of this stuff, so I don't need to have a ton. I'm gonna spin it up. Make sure I get that nice and quartered again. Looks like so. I'm gonna come in here again, I'm gonna brush it out a little bit. Try to pull out some of that. So when I go to pull it rearward, that I get a nice little gill plate appearance out of this material. Okay, so I'm gonna pull it back, and now I'm gonna go take a wrap. I'm gonna go about once, 1.5 times. Bring my thread back in and secure it off so it doesn't go anywhere. Wraps behind, wraps in front. Then I can snip out, making sure not to get my thread. Just get that dubbing loop out of there. Set that aside. Take a few more thread wraps, make sure that isn't going anywhere. Then I'm gonna take and work that back, combing it back over the fly. Just like so. All right. Last real big thing we're gonna do as far as material is concerned is we're gonna put in some deer hair, okay? Deer hair is the time consuming part of this fly. All I'm gonna do is I'm gonna throw a couple half hitches in here because I'm gonna get rid of this thread. I'm gonna go to something a little heavier to work with the deer hair. Get rid of that. Now I'm gonna go with a GSP 200 in white. Just quite a bit heavier thread. It allows me to pull more tension and torque when I'm working with the deer hair. So I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna tie that thread in. You have to have left a little bit of space here for your for the ability to tie in this head, because we do a trimmed deer hair head here. I'm gonna work a little bit more space into this, so I'm gonna take a few more thread wraps back. There we go. What you're gonna need, you are gonna need a hair stacker, so make sure you got that handy. Now let's go ahead and grab a decent little chunk off of a patch here, or if you're pulling out of your kit, you're gonna see we've already got little patches that are trimmed off. So it looks like so. Okay, so that's gonna be the material you're working with. We're gonna come in, we're gonna grab maybe about a pencil width, maybe a little bit less of hair. Once you comb it out, you always lose some of it anyways. So I've got a clump like so. I'm gonna switch my hands like this, clean this out, get all the under fur that's in the hair out. And if you think you might not have the right amount, that's okay, because once we stack it, we can adjust it a little bit. Then I'm put the tips in my hair stacker. Come in, stack it. All my tips are aligned because we're gonna make a collar out of this. We want our tips headed back down the rear side of the fly. Pull that out, get any little pieces out that are still in there. Leaves me with something like this, okay? Now this collar on this fly, I don't want the collar to go all the way around. I'm just gonna focus on that collar being on the top half of the fly. So I'm gonna take this hair and I'm gonna pull it so it goes back about to the back of the hook bend. Once I tie it in, it's gonna flare it up. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna switch hands, and I'm gonna make sure I can work that around the hook so that it's evenly on both sides, just isn't going underneath, because if it does, I'll end up trimming it out anyways, so not a huge deal. I'm gonna take one wrap, start to pull tight, take a second wrap, pull even tighter, take a third wrap going through those butts, pull it nice and tight. Okay, so if I pull this forward, what you're gonna see is that collar is created, like so, which is the collar we wanna use. Now I'm gonna pull some of these butts through, and I'm gonna take a couple thread wraps through them because I'm not gonna waste this hair, I'm gonna use it. It's already in here. Then pull it all the way forward, like so. We're gonna end up using that hair to create some more of this body. Or sorry, this head. Flip it upside down, take another nice little clump. This one doesn't have to be super big. We're just gonna try to fill in the space that we left by having the butt ends of that one in there. Clean it out again with this next clump. This time I'm gonna trim off the tips because I don't need them. Okay, you can confuse them with the collar, so I'll come in, trim those out. Can make a bit of a mess with this stuff, but just do your best, keep your table clean. Now I'm gonna come in and set this on the bottom. Just like I did the other on the top side, I'm just gonna take a wrap once, second one, pull tighter. Okay, let that flare up a bit. I can flip my thread around. Now I'm gonna start working my thread through all this hair. Get it up to about here. Now it's important that you wanna kinda keep all this hair pushed rearward. You can even take the back side of your hair stacker. Make sure you got it pulled back in. Okay, once I got it pulled back, let's take some thread wraps and work them up against the hair. Because this next clump we're gonna put in is gonna be a full spun hair. Make sure your hook is in there nice and tight so it ain't gonna go anywhere on you. Like so. Now this time I'm gonna take a little bit bigger clump off my patch. Maybe a little bit more than that pencil width. Because this is gonna be filling all the way around the hook itself. Pull that out. Same process, clean out the under fur and trim the tips. You can use a comb or just flick it with the finger. You should be able to get most of it out. We're not gonna stack this one again because we don't need those tips aligned. Trim off the tips. We're gonna come in here, lay them at that 45 up against the other hair, kind of evenly, even on both sides, the amount that's there. I'm gonna take my first thread wrap, I'm gonna start to pull, and you're gonna see it start to want to turn around the hook. Second one, I'm gonna pull it, it's gonna let it spin a little bit more. On the third one, I'm gonna let go, grab the eye, let it spin. Take one more, pull it tight. That's why I'm using that thicker thread. It's allowing me to really get a good, lots of tension when I pull on that. I'm gonna take it and push all that back just like I had before. Work my thread through to the front. And that should be enough hair to get a nice head trimmed on this fly. I'm gonna come in here, work my thread back so I got a nice thread dam. Like so. Work that in there. And then we are just gonna whip finish this fly. So come in here with my whip finish tool. Can be a little bit tough to get in there when you have all this extra hair, but just kind of try to hold the hair back and get your whip finish in there. Try to do a couple, 3 turns. Make sure you got that nice and tight before you trim it out. Come in here, trim this out. Good. Now we get to the fun part, we gotta trim this up. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm using a double-sided razor blade. Looks like so. I'll pull it out, show you. But it's in 2 pieces here, so I like to break it in the bag, so I only use half. Break it, that keeps your fingers safe when you're breaking it. Pull it out, looks like so, okay? I like a flatter bottom on this fly and a little bit of a coned head, that's my preference. So I'm gonna come in here and start by trimming the bottom first. Just little pushes with that nice sharp blade should make that hair come off quite well. Not a bad idea to have your waste basket right below you, so you're not making a huge mess. Nice and flat on this side, kind of bring it all the way back to where I left my gill material there. We can finish and trim a little bit of this with scissors after, if we need to. Then on that top section, I want a bit of a dome, so I'm gonna take my razor blade like so, and I'm just gonna give it a little bend. Do that same thing, I'm gonna push back into it. Now remember, behind these tall pieces, we have that collar. And we don't want to cut the collar out, we want to save the collar. So once we start to work through those longer pieces, we be really careful that we're not cutting into that collar. Then when I come to the edges or the sides, I'm going to do a little bit of the same shape, but I'm going to go a little bit more, kind of like a straight angle back, because I'm going to put some eyes on here, and I want to almost create a platform for it, for those eyes to sit on. So you kind of got to go one side to the other, one side to the other, just slowly creating your shape. Nothing fast or overly quick about this. If you go too fast, you end up cutting too much hair out, or you end up with a shape you don't like. So I'm going to try to round off this head a little bit more, get the shape that I want, work all the way back up against that collar without cutting it, like so. Starting to get that shape we want. I'm gonna round that a little. Gonna bring it all the way back to the collar on this side. If you got those long pieces in there, you know you haven't quite reached the collar, you can pull some of that out. That's looking pretty good. I like where that's sitting. Like there, we've got that nice dome, flat bottom. It's gonna dart and dive in the water. Got my collar still on there all the way around, top to bottom. If I have a little bit too much on the bottom, I'll just come under there and clean that out. Okay, last piece of the puzzle here, guys. We're gonna put a couple eyes on, and we're gonna call it good. So I'm just using some gold colored minnow eyes. They look like this. Nice little tip is stick them both in your hand. If you stick them on there, you know exactly where they are as you go to work. So I'm gonna use some UV resin. My UV resin is what I'm gonna use to not only stick them on, but it's gonna be what I use to secure them in place. Just gonna grab my UV light, my UV material here. So I'm using some Solar Res Thin Hard. That's what I'm gonna use. So initially what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna be placing an eye on that flat spot and over here on this flat spot, okay? So I'm gonna come in with my UV material, or sorry, my UV glue here. I'm gonna put a spot right there, just one spot to start with. I'm gonna set my eye on it. I'm gonna push that eye into it, like so, push it in there nice. And then when I hit that with the light, it's gonna secure that initially. And I'm gonna put some more UV on it in a minute, but I wanna get both eyes on first. Flip it up to the other side. Make sure I got a gauge of about where I want it to be so it's even. Put another splotch here. Grab my other eye. Set it in the UV. Push it into place. And I can double check on the other side and make sure that my eyes are even, which it looks like they're pretty good. Come in there, hit it with my torch. So get that so I know it's not going anywhere. Now I'm gonna come in here with my UV resin. And I like to coat my head a little bit with this UV resin. So I'm gonna come in around the eye for one, and I'm also gonna coat a little coating all the way on this hair. So what this does, it almost creates a bill on it, and it makes it a nice hard surface that allows it to do that darting and diving that we want it to do in the water. It's almost working like a bill on a Rapala or something. We just built it out of hair. Go around the edges of those eyes to make sure they're not gonna move. Once we do, we're gonna come in there. We're gonna torch it all. Just like so. Once we know that's good and cured, make sure we've got all that extra hair out that we need. And there you have it. That is our Silent Bob streamer. Great one to keep in the box. That's another quick tie with Tim Hepworth and Fly Fishing Boat Outfitters. We'll see you next time.